Hello everyone, this is Crota coming at you. Today is, well, it doesn't matter what today is. Today we're watching a game between AcerBly and JJAKJI. I know I'm absolutely butchering his name, but this is coming from the Zotac Cup finals. Once again, thanks to Zotac for making and releasing these replays. It feels like without Zotac right now, I would not be able to cast Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2. Alright, on the bottom 6 o'clock position, we have AcerBly spawning as the blue Zerg. Meanwhile, on the top, we have JJAKJI spawning as the red Terran. More in remembrance of how to really say his name, I'm not going to even try to say it anymore. I'll try to refer to them as Terran versus Zerg throughout the rest of this matchup, but I know I'm going to forget at times. Now, TVZ here on Polar Knight LE, I believe that stands for League Edition, and I'm really interested to see how these players are going to be playing this. Now, as the crow flies, or as the Overlord flies in this particular instance, the spawning locations are relatively close. However, due to terrain and due to navigation on the map, it does take a bit of time to actually walk over to your opponent's base. Reapers, however, can turn that long walk into a hop, skip, and a jump, and then end up your opponent's base rather quickly. We'll see if the Terran player JJAKJI here is going to go for exactly that, or if he's going to try and do some sort of other variation. I could see a quick factory after this. I could see a barracks with Reaper. Both of these particular styles do open up and play down differently in terms of what units you have, but no matter what style, we should be seeing a small minor form of harassment to force out army units and a potential expansion behind this. Meanwhile, Bly is setting up a hatchery back at home. You can see, and there it is there. Rather tight choke point right here. There's not a lot of room to maneuver, and the creep actually moves out pretty far. This is one of those instances where your main base, the building, is actually close to that creep, or close to that choke point, and you can actually further increase the size of the choke point by placing down buildings here, and then only worrying about this location here. We are looking at, I believe, yes, Reapers are being trained. Spawning pool now coming into play as well, so this is going to be a Reaper expansion. One of the benefits of that Reaper expansion is that you do not have to worry about supply depots nearly as much, because Reapers just take so gosh darn long to train. You can see SCV production has been halted for that second Reaper, as the Reaper now going to come across the map. The hatchery is already down. The spawning pool is now up. Double queen being trained up, so it was a hatchery first followed by a pool as the Reaper tries to go after the drones. However, is it going to really work? The Reaper trying to do a little bit of a dance there, trying to pull away. You can see that the drone is hiding right there, and now the one Zergling will get taken down. No, poor Micro there. The Reaper lost his target, as we're now looking at a further battle still. The Reapers, however, does regenerate hit points very, very quickly if it is out of combat for quite some time, but has to be extremely careful. You got to remember that Reaper does have a very, very limited shelf life, so to speak, as that Queen is now out in play. That Queen does have superior range. That range of, I believe, 5. Very, very strong range of 7 against air, if I'm remembering all of my StarCraft 2 stats correctly, as this Reaper now simply comes back home. Alright, a little bit of an advantage for Bly. Bly does have a 6 supply lead here. We are going to see a second orbital command now being trained up to try to even up the economic game, as we're sitting at about 900 to 800 resources, but that is a very big very big factor in the mules that are being called in. We can see that the double queens and the Zerglings that were forced to be trained does hurt Bly just a little in terms of his economic openings, being forced to train up more Zerglings than he would have liked, perhaps getting more drones. Reapers hiding off over here. We are going now into a starport. You can see that there is a tech lab being placed down, so this is going to be your standard transition into Hellion Banshee. Hellion Banshee, very popular. The Banshees have really made a strong comeback once the cloaking research was reduced in cost. Now the Reapers are still dancing around here. The Reapers taking down all those Zerglings. I cannot imagine what the Zerglings were thinking whatsoever. The Reapers have basically hit points to give, If it is a low hit point Reaper, might as well wait a few moments, and it is a full hit point Reaper, as the Reapers and the Hellions are once again going at it once more. This is a lot of health between all of the units here, as this Reaper now checks out, scouts out the top ground. It looks as though the Hellions may provide some cover fire. Yes, they do, and all the units will be backing off, as we are now looking into another pair of Hellions making their way into the game. All right, I do not see, this is very strange, I do not see any Banshees. Instead, we're going into Vikings, and there is not a single Banshee on the field or in production. I'm not sure why exactly this tech lab was attached to this starport if you're not going to see Banshees at this stage. And perhaps that was a little bit of a delay. Perhaps now he wants to go Overlord hunting, as we're looking at the bottom portion of the map here. All of those Zerglings are going to try to get a surround onto this location here, and the Zerglings, however, not able to get very much. The Hellions just have mass numbers here, and with numbers, you can just absorb damage and then try to split it across multiple units. You can see all that damage. So many drones are just getting torched, even though there is not blue flame tech. That is a lot of damage to be had. The Queen does get taken down here, and the worker kill count already up to 14, as the Hellions just torching everything left and right. However, those Hellions days are pretty much going to be numbered, getting picked off finally. I don't believe any more drones will be falling. Nope. But the damage was dealt. Bly losing a significant amount of resources. They're now down to how many drones? 31 drones after 14 of them were killed. Huge play there. All right, let's go ahead and see what's going to be happening next. The Zerglings now making their way to the 3 o'clock position, perhaps to try and do a bit of a run by. However, the supply depots are up, making a run by near impossible. You can see that the bunker is in position as well, and really there's no way of knowing how many Marines are inside that bunker. You can tell by the run there. Oh, the Zerglings, are they going to try and run by? Yes, they're going to try to test the waters. However, I believe some damage was dealt. Not much, though, as we're looking at more Marines making their way in. And now we could be seeing perhaps a Viking on the hunt for Overlords. All right, this is not the hunt for red Overlord. This is the hunt for blue Overlord this time. Well, we can turn it to red. There you go. Turn it to red for just a moment. Just looking at the vision of JJAKJI. Yes, hunt for red Overlord coming to a theater near you. Anyways, coming back over here, you can see that, oh, a beautiful Widow Mine hit, followed by the Viking cleanup. That was a huge play. The Widow Mines, each of them doing or dealing about 100 damage, I believe, and then 40 damage in splash. So as long as they target 2 different units, that splash damage essentially does 80 damage to all of those Mutalisks. Those Mutalisks only have 120 hit points. Yes, they have that very good tissue regeneration, which means that after a full 120 seconds, they are back up to full hit points. But that is just a terrible loss, and Bly is finding himself with diminishing returns on his army. He does have this 3rd base now up, and surprisingly, supply-wise, 85 to 81, army supply and worker supply is neck and neck, as we're still looking at how exactly Bly is in this. All right, if JJAKJI thinks that he is much further ahead in this game, he is going to be rudely in for a very rude awakening. Supplies are, well, difference of right now 2, very close to each other, and now the Terran bringing in even more units, trying to train up more Marines as well. You can see mass production here by JJAKJI. Coming back over here, the Mutalisks are now making their way over. You can see an orbital command about to land. Mutalisks just having I guess a very big party over here by the orbital command, as the orbital command will be landing Mutalisks. However, going to be able to clean up some of those Marines. Those Marines not in good position at all, as now a flock, or I guess a flock of Mutalisks backing off, does not want to engage against all of these Widow Mines. There are, count them, 5 Widow Mines in position. The Mutalisks actually hoping to get in some damage there, and this is where you have to be extremely careful. One Marine now making its way over. Does JJAKJI realize that that Marine is a changeling? Yes, he does. There is the attack now coming back over, and all of those Mutalisks getting taken down. There goes an Overseer and the changeling once again. Beautiful play continually by JJAKJI, as he is now up, I believe, in the economic game. Yes, 60 to 53. All of a sudden, Bly knows that he is committing to this attack, How much damage can he do, and can he engage before combat shield or weapons upgrades are completed? Let's go ahead and take a look at this. There's the engage. There's some Baneling splashes. Banelings trying to find their targets, and all of those Marines are just simply running around. Banelings are going to be melting away a handful of Marines there. A huge hit there. As you can see, this one lonesome bunker trying to hold everything off as the new Marines now arrive to the party. All right, we're taking a look. Those Mutalists having a very bad day. Overseer is going to just run on top of those Marines, actually causing some Widowmine splash damage onto the Marines themselves. Beautiful use of the Overlords. Offensive Overlord charging into a group of Marines standing on top of Widowmines that nearly took them down, or at least many of them down. As we can see, the drilling claws nearing completion by those Widowmines. 1 second burrow times instead of the standard 3. Banelings now ready to go. The supply discrepancy getting larger and larger, up to about 20 or 35 now. 35 discrepancy between JJAKJI and Bly. Bly is still trying to be aggressor here. He knows he cannot just sit back and try and win this game by harvesting a lot of minerals. He needs to engage, take down perhaps one of these bases, and deal some actual damage. The main base is nearly mined out here. We can see a 4th base now being taken up by Bly, and Bly already has at least good saturation or fair saturation at this base here. We are looking at a small tactical 8-man Marine drop trying to take down this spawning pool. The spawning pool will slow down any sort of Zergling production, and there you have it. There goes the spawning pool. A new spawning pool already being added before the old one was taken down. All those Marines pretty much taken down here, as we now see a group of Marines trying to take down what was the 3rd base. You can see a quick cancellation on some of those units inside the larva there, and this is pretty much going to be it, as the Banelings chasing after all of those Marines. Those Marines may get melted. Yes, there they go. But with now those upgrades at 1-1, Bly has to give the GG. Game 1 goes to JJAKJI over AcerBly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for Game 2.